The new reboot of Ghostbusters has been denied distribution in China, which happens to be the second biggest movie market in the entire world. And the reason for this is not because of how bad the movie is, but because the Communist Party of China actually has an official rule that bans movies that contain wronged spirits and violent ghosts, monsters, demons, and other inhuman portrayals. Crimson Peak is another movie that fell foul of this, and Pirates of the Caribbean Dead Man's Chest had to make substantial cuts to be released in Chinese theatres. So with this in mind, and also with the release of the new reboot of Ghostbusters in US theatres, I thought I'd bring you a selection of weird trivia with the first 1984 Ghostbusters. Continuing with the Chinese thing, the original movie's title in China, although it was never actually given a theatrical release, was which translates in English to Ghost Catcher Dare Die Team. Not quite as catchy, is it? And the theme song must have been really weird. In your neighborhood, who you gonna call? Ghost Catcher Dare Die Team! Also, in an attempt to get around China's censorship laws, the reboot's title's been tweaked to Superpower Dare Die Team, but that clearly didn't work, did it? It's hard to imagine the iconic movie that is Ghostbusters being any different to the one that we know. However, if Dan Aykroyd's original version was the one that was brought to screen, we'd all be watching a very different movie. In fact, it would even have been called Ghost Smashers. Ghost Smashers was a script Aykroyd originally came up with as a vehicle for himself and fellow Saturday Night Live co-star John Belushi as Peter Venkman, which is a role that eventually went to Bill Murray. Of course, following the death of Belushi after one of his patented cocaine hoover manoeuvres, this wasn't possible, and the script was put on the back burner until Aykroyd showed the concept to Bill Murray, which got the ball rolling again. The initial concept was set in near future and included multiple established teams taking on ghosts using time travel, interdimensional travel, and space travel. This would obviously cost an absolute bomb, so director-producer Ivan Reitman suggested that it was refined to modern day Manhattan and more of an origin story, and the rest, as they say, is history. The role of Winston, played by Ernie Hudson, you know, the guy who's just kind of, well, there, was originally conceived for Eddie Murphy and was supposed to have a much larger role in the film. However, when Murphy declined, the script was reworked to have the initial three Ghostbusters fill the gap and have Winston appear later in the movie. Similarly, Louis Tully was originally intended for John Candy. However, after making several character suggestions which were all rejected, he then quit. So what were the suggestions Candy came up with? Well, for some reason, he was set on giving the character a German accent and owning a pair of Schnauzer dogs. With the villains in the movie already being dog-like creatures and the complete randomness of it, you can kinda see why these suggestions were declined. Believe it or not, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was actually not a 100-foot mascot come to life, and he was actually a stuntman in a latex suit walking around a miniature scale version of New York, complete with model buildings and toy cars. Each suit cost approximately $20,000 and 3 of them were made. All 3 were destroyed on set to create the final shots. Stay Puft was also originally not intended to be the antagonist of the movie. Early visions of the script had Ray own a pet lizard which would be transformed into a building-sized monster, as shown here in production designer Tom Enriquez's concept sketch. Right up until even during the shoot, there was an entire subplot where Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd would appear as homeless men that would comment on the happenings of the film directly to the audience. Ivan Reitman eventually decided that it was just too obvious who the actors were, it would probably be far too distracting for the audience, and so these scenes were cut. Probably one of the better decisions he made, to be honest. Ray Parker Jr. said that he came up with the hook for the famous theme song at 4:30 in the morning after several days of trying and failing to come up with anything worthwhile. When he was tired and running out of time before his deadline, he saw an advert for a drainage company on the TV which prompted him to come up with the line, "Who you gonna call?" Well, that's his story, but we all know he just ripped off Huey Lewis in the news "I Want a New Drug." In order to meet his deadline, he quickly rounded up the only people he could get a hold of at such short notice. So that famous chant you hear, that's Ray Parker Jr.'s girlfriend and a bunch of her mates. You know the famous green ghost that everyone refers to as Slimer? Well, although it's never actually given a name in the script, the cast and crew always refer to it as Onion Head due to its horrible smell. There was to be a scene in which a couple are haunted by Onion Head and are alerted to its presence via its smell, hence the name. But after Bill Murray's line, "He slimed me," fans gave Onion Head the nickname Slimer, and realising its popularity, the name was then appropriated for merchandising purposes. Alright, last one. Look at this picture and pay attention to the costumes. Do you see those plastic tubes? Take a guess what they're for. Well, according to Dan Aykroyd, the costumes were specifically designed to be highly functional, and those pipes, in case the Ghostbusters pee themselves due to fear. Yup. very much for watching what I think are some pretty interesting tidbits about Ghostbusters 1984. If you like this video, please don't forget to share it with a friend, and if you want more Ghostbusters action, then check out my review of the current reboot by clicking the picture below. Alternatively, click here to see my latest review. Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.